Now is the historical moment, the time, not only to fight severe virus, but to shape the system.
We have a unique but rapidly shrinking window of opportunity to learn lessons and reset ourselves on a more sustainable path. It is an opportunity we have never had before and may never have again. So we must use all the levers we have at our disposal, knowing that each and every one of us has a vital role to play.
Now is the time to think what history would say about this crisis. And now is the time for all of us to define our own role. What is it that would make it so that history would look at this crisis as the great opportunity for reset?
The Great Reset is a welcome recognition that this human tragedy must be a wake-up call. It is imperative that we reimagine, rebuild, redesign, reinvigorate and rebalance our world. Rebalancing investment, harnessing science and technology, and advancing the transition to net zero emissions, all elements of the Great Reset, are fundamental to building the future we need.
The world's problems fit on three sides of a triangle. It's one versus many, man versus nature, and the unfortunate foundation is long-term versus short-term.
We had already income inequality that was fueling income, race, gender inequality. We have a climate emergency, which we can't walk away from. There's no doubt that the very survival of the human race requires us to act.
Any recovery stimulus should have green conditions attached to it. Energy prices should reflect real costs.
You need private sector capital, private sector ingenuity, private sector technology, and private sector capabilities to come to the party. You need enormous trust between the private sector and the public sector for this to actually work.
We have to change our economy dramatically in the next 20 or 30 years and the next 10 years. It's absolutely decisive.
The recovery has to be greener than any of the previous recoveries. And in order to do that, we need to ensure that the stimulus package, including fiscal and monetary, are much greener than they were before. So we cannot waste this opportunity to ensure that the very precious money that's raised from the next generation is spent on green and low carbon.
We will now start a quite high number of task forces to look at all the different issues, and we will present all those ideas to the people assembled in Davos. But at the same time, we will make Davos very different, very open, to ensure that we do not fall back to old recipes, but that we really look at forward-oriented solutions.
Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. Before we hit the Great Reset button, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. If you click the like button, it convinces YouTube to show this video to more people. So, if you've been paying attention to those really rich people at the World Economic Forum talking about how great they are, or if you've been going down the 4chan rabbit hole, you may have heard of this concept, the Great Reset. It works like this. The world economy has been broken because of the coronavirus, and to fix it, we have to turn the economy off and then back on again. Okay, it's not actually like pressing a big reset button, like some stock images would have you believe. It's more like this.
And moving forward, you should expect the government to take a more active role in the economy and in societal issues.
The idea of a Great Reset has been around for years, but it really started to gain traction back in June 2020, when the World Economic Forum officially announced their Great Reset initiative. They write, there is an urgent need for global stakeholders to cooperate in simultaneously managing the direct consequences of the COVID-19 crisis. Even if you haven't heard of the World Economic Forum, you've probably heard of Davos, which is their annual meeting in Davos, Switzerland. It's where more than 3,000 business leaders, politicians, prominent activists, and others meet to talk about how they're making the world a better place, in their opinion. It's basically Burning Man for the global elite. Davos partners include some of the biggest companies in the world, like Alibaba, Google, Goldman Sachs, Huawei, BlackRock, JP Chase, McKinsey, Citi, Coca-Cola, Microsoft, Facebook. You get the picture. The last Davos summit happened in January this year, just as the coronavirus was spreading around the world. And there's no doubt that the coronavirus has caused a crisis. More than one, actually. Thanks to the Chinese government's initial 6-week cover-up, the coronavirus spread around the world, infecting people in every country. More than 1 million people have died worldwide. The other crisis is the economic devastation. As governments around the world followed the Chinese Communist Party's lockdown model, small businesses were forced to close, and job loss has skyrocketed. So with these twin crises caused by the Chinese and other governments' response to the coronavirus, what can be done? Well, the World Economic Forum has a solution: the Great Reset. This is not the first time the World Economic Forum has come up with a grand-sounding global solution, the kind that, depending on your point of view, sounds either inspirational or terrifying. Like when they talked about Globalization 4.0 shaping a new global architecture in the age of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, or creating a shared future in a fractured world, or the Great Transformation. With names like these, I'm surprised people weren't scared of the World Economic Forum until now. So back to this year's Great Reset initiative. The World Economic Forum is strangely short on details of how it would actually work. That's probably why it's led to so many conspiracy theories. But while the Great Reset is openly talked about, there's surprisingly little information on specific programs, or how much money ought to be allocated to what. So at this point, it's just vague, big picture stuff. For example, they say governments should implement long overdue reforms that promote more equitable outcomes. Depending on the country, these may include changes to wealth taxes, the withdrawal of fossil fuel subsidies, and new rules governing intellectual property, trade, and competition. Okay, so the solution to the crises caused by government is more government intervention. Intervention that has nothing to do with the coronavirus. It's almost as if governments want to use the coronavirus as an excuse to do the things they had been planning to do anyway. So obviously, the kind of conservative folk who want small government, low taxes, and property rights are not too happy about that agenda. They don't want a small group of elites at the World Economic Forum rewriting the rules of the economy, or giving governments an excuse to become more powerful with more control over the economy. But it's more than that. The World Economic Forum says we must build entirely new foundations for our economic and social systems. They don't explain what that means, which has led some people to compare it to the Communist Manifesto, because it sounds a bit like the forcible overthrow of all existing social conditions. But while the World Economic Forum's promises of a Great Reset may sound like a communist love fest, the far left is not going to love it either. I'll explain why after the break.
It's hard to believe that 5G is as amazing as everyone is saying, so we've brought in Mint Mobile Head of Technology, Rizwan Kasim, to explain it to us. Riz?
Well, 5G is substantially more spectrally efficient with lower latency, so it's an order of magnitudes improvement over 4G.
It seems we may never know what 5G is, so we're just going to give it away for free with every plan until we can figure that out.
No, we're not. Oh, I guess we are.
We are. Thank you for trying, Riz.
I thought my explanation was good.
No, God, no.
Welcome back. The World Economic Forum is proposing a Great Reset, one that promises more equity and inclusion. It may be pandering to the political left, but that doesn't mean the political left is actually going to like it. Keep in mind that the main groups that have been protesting the World Economic Forum for decades have been on the far left, from fiery climate activists, to anti-globalists, to straight-up communists. Folks on the left typically don't like a small group of rich capitalists at the World Economic Forum dictating policy for the rest of us. Rich capitalists like Prince Charles from the British monarchy, Larry Fink from BlackRock Multinational Investment Company, and George Soros, from all the conspiracy theories. So really, the Great Reset is something ordinary people on the left and right see as a potential problem. A small group of rich, powerful elite influencing governments to change the rules of the economy. And while the World Economic Forum has been short on details, here's an example of what the world could look like after a Great Reset, from an article published by the World Economic Forum 4 years ago. It imagines life in the year 2030, where everything is digitized and everyone has free, unlimited access to clean energy somehow. I don't own anything. I don't own a car. I don't own a house. I don't own any appliances or any clothes. That sounds like abject poverty, but it's totally not. The article is suggesting that you don't need to own anything because you can just get everything for free as a service. We have access to transportation, accommodation, food, and all the things we need in our daily lives. One by one, all these things became free, so it ended up not making sense for us to own much. If that sounds like a beautiful utopia to you, think about it in a historical context. Remember all the governments that promised free stuff? In China, Mao Zedong promised land to the tillers, but as soon as he rose to power, he ended up killing the landlords and forcing people to work on collective farms. Soon, millions of people starved to death. Well, except for the wealthy elite. In Venezuela, Hugo Chavez promised to eradicate poverty. But within 2 decades, he had turned a nation that was unequal but prosperous into a nation where everyone was equal, equally poor and can barely afford food. Well, except for the wealthy elite. Governments that promised equality and free stuff have always ended up taking away people's money and property rights, from the Soviet Union to Cuba to Zaire. Wait, but how about the Nordic countries that are touted as great models of socialism? The secret is, they're not socialist. The Nordic countries all made free market reforms in the late 20th century because their economies were crashing under the weight of big government. Now, they all have free markets, private business, and ensure strong property rights. And let's look at Norway, which has the highest GDP per capita. Their secret to economic success? It starts with massive oil extraction, and then they invest oil money in stock markets in other countries. So basically, Norway pays for its big social programs through oil and capitalism, not through green energy and equity. So, back at the World Economic Forum, when they talk about so-called equity, and when they talk about a green recovery, keep in mind, this is being said by a small group of elite billionaires who are flying to their meeting in Davos on thousands of private jets. When they talk about a Great Reset, do you think they really want equality for everyone? Seriously, who on earth would put their hopes for a greener and more equitable world in the hands of governments and the wealthy elite? Do you think that will benefit everyone? Or do you think it'll benefit the governments and the wealthy elite? Sure, they still haven't given us any details on what the Great Reset actually is. But I know one thing. If it happens, the rest of us are not going to like it. But the real question is, will it actually happen? Are governments and multinational corporations actually pushing for a Great Reset? Or is it just inspirational/terrifying marketing speak for people who go to the World Economic Forum to feel good about themselves? After all, the World Economic Forum has been using similar language to the Great Reset for years. Like here, where they talk about how the underlying systems are broken and a major rethink needs to take place to move in the right direction to realize a global vision for a more sustainable and inclusive growth model for the world and future generations. That's from their Great Transformation theme back in 2012. And it reminds me of the time I forgot to finish an English paper in college and ended up staying up all night to turn my 2-page essay into a 10-page essay, with the help of lots and lots of Red Bull.
Mysterious pneumonia outbreak in Wuhan, China.
A new type of coronavirus.
The number of affected countries has tripled.
The World Health Organization has just declared that this is a pandemic.
What the heck is that? With these 5 little words, the world was plunged headlong into one of the most curious and extensive mysteries of our time. They were spoken by a member of a Utah Department of Public Safety helicopter crew as they flew over the vast expanse of Utah's wilderness on November 18, 2020. The crew had been tasked with counting bighorn sheep for the government when suddenly, beneath their helicopter, noticeably out of place amongst the red rock cliffs and dusty valleys, stood a shimmering metallic monolith. Okay, the intrepid explorers go down to investigate the alien life form, one of the crew exclaimed as the helicopter descended to take a closer look. Pilot Brett Hutchings would later tell news outlets, "We were joking around that if one of us suddenly disappears, I guess the rest of us make a run for it," adding that the monolith was the strangest thing that I've come across out there in all my years of flying. So, what was it? This mysterious metallic monolith alone in the desert. "Is this something NASA stuck up there or something?" Hutchings asked. "Are they bouncing satellites off it?" No, it was not something NASA stuck up there. In fact, as the Utah Department of Public Safety said on its website, there was no obvious indication of who might have put the monolith there. This led to much speculation. After all, the monolith had appeared many miles from any city, in a place humans rarely, if ever, traversed. The Utah Department of Public Safety offered speculation of their own, releasing a statement which read, "It is illegal to install structures or art without authorization on federally managed public lands, no matter what planet you're from." Were they suggesting the monolith could be extraterrestrial in origin? Perhaps they were joking, except legally, the desecration of federally protected lands is a serious crime. When a home is burglarized, the police don't joke that it was the work of extraterrestrials. Politicians don't argue that it was aliens who rigged elections against them. So why then would the government organization tasked with stopping the desecration of federal lands joke about their failure to do so? Certainly they took certain aspects of their duty seriously, refusing to release the location of the monolith to the public so as to prevent curious onlookers from trekking out into the desert and causing further environmental harm. Unfortunately for them, mystery hunters soon found the location using a simple search of Google Earth. Oddly, Google Earth revealed that the monolith had been in place since sometime in 2016, leaving many to ask how it had not been discovered for more than 4 years. In short order, tourists and social media influencers flocked to the Utah wilderness looking for answers. But before answers could be found, the monolith suddenly vanished, not even 2 weeks after it had first appeared. This was not the end of the mystery. In fact, it was only the beginning. The very same day that the Utah monolith disappeared, a new monolith appeared, some 6,000 miles away in Romania, close to an important archaeological site just outside the city of Piatra Neamț. Was it coincidental that at almost the exact moment one monolith had vanished, another had appeared? The mayor of Piatra Neamț, Andrei Carabelia, offered his thoughts. "My guess is that some alien, cheeky and terrible teenagers left home with their parents' UFO and started planting metal monoliths around the world, first in Utah and then at Piatra Neamț. I am honored that they chose our city." Perhaps not too honored, since a few days later, the Romanian monolith, like its counterpart in Utah, suddenly vanished, leaving only a small hole covered by rocky soil. Locals told the media that the night before the monolith's disappearance, they saw mysterious lights at the monolith's location.